Greetings nerdy list aficionados, welcome back, and it's time to revisit our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, or well, some alternate versions of him at least. Spider-Man has alternates coming from all corners. Parallel universes, alternate timelines, legacy characters, clones, there's plenty of Spidey to go around. So it should be no surprise that when it comes to strongest alternates, we're already on to part 2. These are the top 10 strongest alternate versions of Spider-Man, part 2. I tried to pick a range, so it's going to be eclectic. Let's get started. Number 10. Superior Spider-Man. Now the Superior Spider-Man was a series in the main 616 verse that ran from 2013 to 2014. So how is this an alternate version, you ask? Well, for this period of time, Dr. Octopus had implanted his mind into the body of Peter Parker, who had died at the conclusion of the Dying Wish storyline. This led to the 2013 run where Octavius was Spider-Man. He kept functioning as Spider-Man, albeit a bit more abrasive and a slightly tyrannical one. While he possessed all of Spider-Man's powers and abilities, and also at the time Peter's assets, as Peter had his life together and was running a company at that time, he also possessed something else: his own intellect and villainous tendencies. Octavius at times seemed to think on a larger scale, for example, commissioning spider bots to patrol the city and help him in his battle against crime. Little things like that to make himself more efficient, and that extra efficiency was definitely a strength in his favor. Now while it's interesting to see Otto try to be Peter, the thing that always traumatizes me about these stories is people not catching on. Oh, perpetually stressed out Peter, always trying to juggle everything, suddenly is super organized and is also ruling his area with an iron fist. Seems legit. I would be so mad when I got my body back. It's like when Tony's armor kidnapped him and pretended to be him and no one noticed for a bit. Horrifying. Number 9. No More. Now this is another what if style alternate, emerging from the No More story arc in Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man. In this story, a trip back in time results in Peter Parker creating an alternate timeline through divulging some information to his past self that makes him not want to be Spider-Man at all. The reason? He sees what we all see. Peter's life is a hot mess. Friends dying, friends becoming villains, just villains everywhere, constant stress. With great power comes frequent narrative drama. So this Peter sets upon the path to become a successful industrialist, married to a very much alive Gwen Stacy. In this world, Peter uses his money to fund resistance operations and superheroes. Resistance because Norman Osborn has conquered the world and imprisoned Iron Man and the Fantastic Four. Now mileage varies as to whether or not Peter not being Spider-Man would have resulted in this, but hey, that's what these storylines are for. This Peter's power comes from his influence, wealth, and reach, and some would argue he is doing more good this way. Someone just needs to take out Norman. There are different forms of power, guys. And being strong doesn't guarantee success. You know some of the alternates on this list are dead. Side note, does anyone else remember that retcon where Gwen was having an affair with Norman Osborn before she died? Just cuz? Retcons, ruining everything for everyone, except for the handful of people that like the shift. Number 8. Peter Spector, Infinity Warps. Yes, you heard that right, Infinity Warps, not wars. Though the warp universe does arrive from the Infinity War storyline, when Gamora used the stones to fold the universe in half, which created Warp World, which was essentially another amalgam universe, just between Marvel characters rather than Marvel and DC, fusing these Marvel characters together. From this fusion we got Peter Spector, merging Spider-Man and Moon Knight. The story is essentially Moon Knight with some Spider-Man elements thrown in. After his Uncle Ben and Aunt May are murdered by Goblin, by Knight, a fusion of Norman Osborn and Jack Russell, a dying Peter is revived by Master Weaver, the deity of the spider totems, to be its avatar, and is granted spider powers. However, it also splits his personality into 4 people, but that's no big. He becomes the Arachnite and fights crime by night, and is a CEO by day, and also by night, because they have crazy hours. So he's got a bit of getting powers directly from Master Weaver boost. Plus, come on, CEO resources. Number 7. The VENOMVERSE. The VENOMVERSE was a 2017 limited series clearly hoping to follow in the footsteps of the massively successful Spider-Verse comics, which had occurred in 2014, but have been revisited many times since. The crux of this is Mainverse Venom being recruited by a version of Doctor Strange to help in a war between the Venoms and the Poisons. Poisons being creatures that feed on symbiotes, hailing from a universe overrun by them. They bond to heroes who are bonded to symbiotes, absorbing them and becoming a poison version of them. Kinda like the Thing. So Venom must lead an army of alternate universe Venoms in battle, which leads us to Spider-Man, a Peter Parker who in this universe took the symbiote back after it left Eddie Brock. So of course he's Spider-Man but augmented with all the symbiote's abilities, as well as later on poison abilities, because he gets consumed by one pretending to be Aunt May, which adds psionic energy to his repertoire, and even more strength, because the poison's abilities are augmented by the fact that they form a permanent bond with their host. Though because of that, once the bond is formed, they can't jump hosts. Peter in this universe gets blown up, because with great power does not come immunity to bombs. Number 6. Goblin, Earth 21205. This Peter Parker starts off on a similar path to the 616 Spider-Man, until Gwen Stacy is killed. At that point he snaps and murders the Green Goblin. He then changed his alias to the Goblin. As Goblin, he was targeted by the Inheritors, pseudo-vampires who feed specifically on the life force of spider totems. So Goblin Peter has all of Spider-Man's abilities, plus a Goblin's tech. His glider is actually called the Demonic Glider, and he uses pumpkin bombs. Most fans think of him as the alternate universe Hobgoblin. Number 5. Spiders-Man, Earth 11580. No, that spiders is not a typo. This Peter Parker is actually a collection of spiders sharing a hive mind and coming together to form his body. This occurred as a result of, you guessed it, a horrible lab accident. When Peter was invited by Max Modell to go visit his company Horizon Labs, they were there watching a giant spider colony that Modell was bombarding with radiation, you know, for science. When Peter fell in and was devoured, but not his consciousness, no, that was absorbed by the spiders. Taking on his personality and developing a thirst for justice, these spiders fight crime in what they call Cruel York. Where's the strength? Well, these spiders can deform and swarm, as Jack-o'-lantern learned when he slashed open the costume and just got covered with spiders. Disgusting. Also, extra power boost for squicking out people with arachnophobia. He's a walking nightmare. Number 4. Spidercide. Spidercide is one of the many clones to emerge from the never-ending clone saga, which was dragged out by the editors at the time for years. Like most of the clones, this one believed he was the true Peter, and confronted the others, namely Spider-Man, Ben Reilly, and Kane. However, it turned out he had been engineered by the Jackal to be a killer and take out all the other versions. He was also engineered to have some extra abilities beyond Peter's traditional power set. The most notable, the ability to alter his molecular structure, meaning he could do things like stretch like Mr. Fantastic, but he could also shapeshift, control his density, or turn himself fully or partially into liquid. He's a Terminator. It's really amazing they survived him. So how did this character die? What with all these assets? Well, he fell off the rooftop of the Daily Bugle. Yep. Listen, when the writers want you dead, you die. Number 3. Anansi from Spider-Man Fairy Tales, part of the Marvel Fairy Tales limited series. Spider-Man Fairy Tales was second in a series of 3 and was published in 2007. This collection features a story about Anansi, the first Spider-Man. You'll be familiar with him if you're up on your West African mythology or if you've read Gaiman's American Gods. Anansi is a trickster god who takes on the form of a spider. So in Marvel, Kwaku Anansi was the first Spider-Man, who sold himself to the sky god Nyame in exchange for wisdom, which he passed on to spiders, through whom he tries to instill that the greatest power is friendship and cooperation. Why so high up? Well, they say knowledge is power, and Anansi's got a lot of that. Number 2. Spider-Boy. This character comes from the Amalgam universe, wherein the heroes of DC and Marvel were fused together after a series of lead-up, team-up crossover comics. This occurred in the mid to late 90s. This character was Peter Ross and was a combination of Spider-Man and Superboy, the result of Cadmus creating a clone of Peter Parker. He was later adopted by Thaddeus Ross. He has some of Superboy's abilities, which allow him to shift gravity, which ups his power scale, giving him some Superman-esque abilities, and we all know how powerful Superman is. Spider-Boy is an agent for Cadmus, tasked with fighting genetic monstrosities. But can we talk about how one of the taglines for his arc after getting engaged to Mary Jane, the Insect Queen, was, now he faces his biggest adventure, marriage. No one should be exposed to that much cheese. Number 1. Apuk, the Decapitator. Best name. Just the best. Inspires fear. This is another god. This one from one of the Mochi peoples in Peru and South America. He resembles a man with the lower body of a spider, which aids in the multi-limbed appearance in the black Spider-Man costume he sports, though he has achieved this partially thanks to genetic modification courtesy of Norman Osborn, which cut down on some of the limbs. A cruel god, he was captured by government officials and kept underwater in a maximum containment area, you know, the Wrap, along with some of the Marvel Universe's most dangerous criminals. He later ends up joining Osborn's Dark Avengers team as their Spider-Man, and has been a staple of that team ever since. People like him. He's a cool, evil, chaotic character, who may or may not be dead, but he's a god, so probably not. I mean, regular people can't stay dead in comics. So why is he the strongest? No flimsy in the name of god tier status for I. On top of all your usual fare, strength, durability, dense skin, reflexes, agility, he also has a regenerative regenerative healing factor, is functionally immortal, or in tick terminology, is nigh invulnerable. He also is venomous, with fangs and a poison bite. So to anyone going up against that, good luck. So those were some strong alternate Spider-Men. People get so creative with Spider-Man, I love it. He's such a versatile character. Let's get a little niche. Which era of Spidey is your favorite? I will always have a soft spot for the 90s animated series, extreme edge theme and all. Some say that was the first true crossover universe. Let me know your favorite iteration down below. I'm Sasha, thanks so much for watching Top 10 Nerd. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more nerdy lists. And Kelly, Johnny, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.